Hi, I'm Elaine Chow.
And I'm Trist Curless.
Welcome to The Musician's Loop.
Today we're doing something that we probably should have done a little while ago. We are going to let you know a little bit about ourselves and, frankly, tell you why you would even care to listen to what we might have to say about particular songs in question.
First of all, we wanted to thank all of the people who listened to our pilot and gave us this great feedback about just helping everyone to understand why we are doing this podcast in the first place and a little bit about our background and why we feel like we have something to say here.
Absolutely, Elaine. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do now as your career and how you relate to this podcast?
Awesome. Well, I am a lifelong musician, but that is not something that I do professionally. And one of the things that I do, I work in the software industry. I am a product manager. I lead a product team for a technological platform. So, the things that I'm working on are not exactly very music related, although I do work for a creative company. I do have to say here that the opinions that I expressed in this podcast are not the opinions of my employer. I have still continued my music career, even through a career in software and in education. This means that I am not a full-time career musician, even though I have been regularly performing and engaging in writing and all sorts of music things and creating music videos, all sorts of really cool things like that. The last thing that I wanted to mention here is that I do have my master's in education. I did spend some time teaching high school, and now I do teach as well, but in martial arts. So something that I bring in is a different type of teaching experience than most people in the industry. But one thing that I do believe is that all of the things that I've just talked about, whether it's working with other people in a major company or teaching martial arts at the collegiate level, I have found that there are really interesting connections between the things that I do outside of music to my experience inside of music. So that's a little bit more about me.
Wow, sounds amazing. If you don't like her opinions, she's a black belt, folks. She'll come make you believe her opinions.
I would like to think that that's how the world works, but it
Oh,
doesn't.
that's not? Okay.
But tell me a little bit more about yourself, Tris. Like, why don't you introduce yourself?
Well, again, Trist Curless. I'm currently kind of in a little more of a freelance stage, but primarily focusing on being an educator and an adjudicator at jazz festivals, a director of vocal jazz ensembles, like directing all-state vocal jazz groups around the country, as well as going to schools again and festivals and working with vocal jazz ensembles of all ages, sometimes being a guest artist. Also have put together a Lambert, Hendricks, and Ross tribute group. I didn't intend to do that. I was asked to do that at my alma mater, University of Northern Colorado, for one show, and it was so fun and so much work that I thought we should do it more often. So I'm trying to keep that going. It's called the LHR Project. And also, alongside being a performer still, I am a sound engineer. So I split time with some other really great engineers in live performance, mixing the a cappella vocal group Take 6, also of which I'm a longtime fan. So I'm very fortunate that I get to do that. I always like to say I get to go to Take 6 concerts, but I get paid to be at them, and I get to make them sound exactly how I want. So it's like a fan's dream. So I can never complain about how the sound person is doing their job, and I don't have to pay for tickets to go see them. So it's a pretty great gig.
And I actually have gone to one of those gigs before, and it is pretty amazing to be able to hear that. Now, one of the things that you talked about was education and like teaching students. And I think part of the reason they're bringing you in is because of your background. So, can you talk a little bit more about your musical background and just like, the performing experiences that you've had, the groups that you've worked with?
Absolutely. Like I mentioned, I went to the University of Northern Colorado. I was a music education major there. Shortly after that, I started the a cappella vocal group called m-pact, M-pact. 5 and then 6 guys doing R&B, pop, soul, jazz, a cappella, kind of a vocal band concept rather than being more choral. We had kind of a vocal percussionist, drummer, and I was kind of the bass player of the rhythm section when we weren't singing, just kind of more choral type arrangements. We had a little bit of both of those things going, and we're always kind of jazz adjacent until we started doing some more festivals and added a lot more straight ahead stuff so we could fit in there. And then also as an engineer, I was an engineer for the vocal group Pentatonix and for Straight No Chaser. So I did that for a while as well. And then first I was substituting for and then became a member of the Manhattan Transfer, the multi-Grammy-award winning vocal ensemble, probably one of the most famous vocal ensembles ever, really, in many ways, just because they did so many different kinds of styles. And again, I was a big fan before I was a member. And still, as I'm saying it now, it almost sounds like I must be lying, because there's no way I ever could have been in that group. But spent 10 years doing that. The group gracefully retired at the end of 23. And yeah, it was an absolutely amazing ride.
Yeah, and I mean, one other thing that you have done as a part of your a cappella performing experience is sub, and I think that's something that not a whole lot of people talk about is being a contract freelance musician where you're constantly stepping into existing groups and learning their music and supporting them as they're touring. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. And I guess that now that you mention it, it kind of relates to this podcast, in that a large part of my musical journey just involves listening and digging into the music. And so, yeah, having to fill in again, even for the transfer. So when I first started, I was just subbing in and had maybe about 2 weeks to learn, the entire 90-minute show. Granted, I was a fan, so knew a lot of the music to some degree, but still had to catch up on how do they sing it now? Is the part that I feel like I'm hearing on a recording, is that how they do it? Do I have it right? Etc. And then them not always having necessarily a piece of sheet music that has the current way they sing it, even if they had the original one at all, which would quite often have been a studio recording, which might have 6 or 7 or 8 vocal parts on it that may not have much to do with what you would do now in a live 4-part setting. So in terms of doing the podcast, I just love breaking down music and really getting into what's happening there. And I think I developed that over the years by many different times being asked to fill in. Hey, here's some music we do. Can you come sit in for 3 shows, 5 shows, a week of shows, 1 show? And so done that for vocal groups like Naturally 7 and the Swingle Singers. Actually, in high school, I even had to do that. Kind of started my journey of that with only about 3 days notice. There was a group at my high school. We were going to a festival, and one of the guys in one of the other groups, I guess he wasn't eligible, failed a math test or something put him ineligible. So I had 2 days to learn their 4 songs and go sing at the festival. So I got that learning at an early age. So sure, other musical tools of learning theory and being able to sight read and different musical tools and are useful, but I would say the number one tool for me has always been just listening and adapting and soaking in the different sounds that I hear and making that be the main makeup of my musicianship.
Yeah, I really think that like stepping in at the last minute and having to learn a whole lot and not just learn, but memorize and be able to perform a whole lot of different music is just the next level of a skill set, right? And I don't think I recognized it and appreciated that until I started doing that myself.
Hmm. Yeah, nice. And what about you? What are some of your musical backgrounds?
Yeah, I was thinking about this as we were preparing for this. My background is not actually in vocal music. My background is in classical. And so I was a classically trained pianist. I was privileged enough to have individual lessons growing up of all the way from like age 6 until I graduated from high school. And it wasn't until I hit college that I started singing and learning a little bit more about formal choral music and eventually into a cappella, which is where you and I intersected. So, yeah, after then, I spent some time in hip hop. Because one of the things that I started doing in a cappella was vocal percussion, which led over into beatboxing really well. So I spent about 6 years doing that. And then, since then, I've done a whole lot of writing and recording, some kind of like recording over myself, etc. But one thing that I still do, and I started during this time, and really informs, I think, a lot of my perspective on this podcast, was playing in sacred spaces. And so, especially starting out with a smaller church experience where we had a whole lot of instrumentalists, and some of them were formally trained. A lot of them were formally trained, actually, because I went to an ethnic Chinese American church for a long time. And as a part of that, a lot of people had formal lessons in one kind of classical instrument and then would pick up other instruments as we went along. So then, as we were trying to fill out our band, I would rotate through instruments. So one week I'd be playing guitar and singing, and the next week I'd be playing piano, and the following week I'd be playing bass. And eventually, I started playing kit drums as well. And so all of this experience led into more ensemble experience and more like instruments and voices. Now I am at a much, much larger church, and so it's no longer, a small group. Now it's a full-on band with professional musicians who come and support us, whether it's professional drummers or bassists, or music directors. And the church that I go to right now, probably brings in, I'm playing 3 services a weekend. We probably have 2,500 people coming in any given Sunday, and of course, Christmas and Easter are larger.
And what do you
So
play there?
it's definitely at a different scale. There's a lot of different technology that's involved in every Sunday's production, and that is something that is a huge, brand new experience for me, especially in church settings, right? And at the same time, it is something that is very significant to me, both the church experience, the sacred experience, and the experience of holding space for other people to connect with the divine. That's something that is really important to me as well.
And what are you doing in the band there? What are you playing?
I'm
Playing and
playing
singing?
well, now I'm both playing and singing. For the past 2 years has been primarily acoustic guitar, and recently I've added in singing harmonies, and that, as a former a cappella singer, and I guess, once an a cappella singer, always an a cappella singer, you can pick out harmonies really easily, and so with my musical background, it is a lot easier for me to pick up all of these, "Oh, you wanna sing high, you wanna sing low, like, I need you to hold this harmony," etcetera. So doing that at the same time as playing acoustic and following a click and following a music director who's talking in my ear has been quite a musical challenge, and so it's great.
Something I've always enjoyed in discussing music with you. Tell me about your relationship to pop culture and your knowledge of certain music up to a certain point because of your upbringing with your family, where they're from, and just the relationship with you and pop culture in general.
Yeah, and I think that really leads to the heart of this podcast because I guess one of the things I wanted to share is a little bit about how this podcast came to be. This is, I think, we're going on probably 8 or 9 years of talking about music together as longtime friends, but also just thinking about music in general. First of all, my classical music experience definitely very wide ranging. A whole lot of things, like I got a whole lot of classical theory. I got a lot of Mozart and Beethoven and Chopin and Rachmaninoff. But what I didn't get was pop music because that wasn't what my piano teacher was teaching me. I also barely got any jazz music as well because I didn't really discover jazz until, besides big band, until probably my late teens, early 20s or so. So all of my music growing up was either what I heard on the radio, which, classic pop music when I was growing up, or what my dad listened to. And my dad grew up in Taiwan. And one of the things about growing up in another country outside of the US is that all of the American pop music would eventually make it over to those countries, but it would be delayed by about 10 years. And so my dad grew up with music not in the time that he grew up, which was, in the kind of like early 60s or so. So I missed the Beatles. I missed like a whole bunch of other stuff that was going on that time. But I got a whole lot of 1950s music growing up. And I got the Oak Ridge Boys growing up. I got a whole bunch of things that, you just wouldn't think it would come to a second generation Taiwanese American immigrant. And so I walked into college just having this big gap. I'd say probably, 1960s to even 1990s, right? Because, when you're only listening to the radio, you're only listening to 2 or 3 radio stations, you miss a whole lot of music. So when you and I first started talking, it was because I had said, "Oh, my experience with jazz is based off of these couple of a cappella groups, jazz standards albums." And I think your head exploded a little bit and you're like, we need to work on this. And so this was an opportunity for the both of us to really dig into music. You from your encyclopedic knowledge of music, and me just from the gaps of my understanding, but just knowing music really, really well. And so our conversations over the years, I think, has really I think we've brought different things to listening to music. Me with more or less a brand new lens, right? Or a loop, as we've been calling
Mhm.
it, onto music. And you, like, through the experience of just listening to so much and like knowing so much about music and the music industry.
Yeah, it's been really fun to share things. It's fun for me to, much like we'll do in the podcast just over the years, to be excited about sharing an album that I've always loved and knowing that it's very unlikely that you had ever heard of it because of all of the aforementioned gaps, etc. So something that to me seems like, oh, well, everybody knows these songs. So being able to have them be brand new to you sometimes is really fun. I think is something that really did lead to this idea of we're already talking about this. So let's record it and see if anyone else cares.
And one of the other things that I have been thinking about recently has to do with an intersection with my career. So I work as a product manager at a major software company. And one of the things we've been thinking about in software is everything from usability to marketing to how is it positioned in a market, et cetera. And those are the same types of business lessons that are super applicable to musicians. And so now as I look back on my music experience, right, as a professional musician, and I think about the way that our friends and you are approaching building a career out of music, I see a lot of really clear connections across these various lessons. And that's something that I'm hoping that in this podcast we'll also have an opportunity to explore is, what can we learn from business? What kinds of things have we learned just through like sheer experience? Works, doesn't work, has changed over the past couple of years. And these are the things that I think are applicable to all of us as musicians, especially if we want to get our music out there and, get more gigs and meet more people.
Absolutely. So that was just a little bit about us. Thought we would just take a minute to share a little bit about who we are and why you would listen to what we have to say. Hope to share some insight and share some songs that you've always loved and want to hear someone talk about, or that you just didn't really know before, and get some insight into them. And maybe it'll inspire you to open your ears a little bit and find more music and make music a bigger part of your life. So thank you for checking this out, learning a little bit about us, and getting on to some of the podcasts we have created for you. And frankly, lastly, I'd say I just like doing this because I just love music so much and just want to share these tunes. I get very excited about it. I get just as much out of just telling something about a song I like as I do being a performer on the stage. When I'm performing on stage, it's more like, hey, everyone, check out how cool music is, more than check out this thing I can do. I think this is just an extension of that. So it's great to have this platform to do it.
Yeah, and for me, it's not only just talking about music and reacting to it, but also creating community. Like that's something that I'm very passionate about is creating community for where we can actually have discussions and encourage one another along our journeys and really like cheer for one another as we are accomplishing things. So, yeah, definitely hoping to hear from you all. Feel free to email us at the musicians loop. That's the musicians LOUPE at gmail.com. We're also on both Threads and Instagram. And we also have a Facebook page, although we're probably not going to be maintaining that a whole lot or monitoring that a whole lot. So please do drop us a line or respond to one of our questions on the line because we would love to hear from you.
And give us ideas for what you want to hear about, or what you want to hear less about, even is fine. And maybe even song ideas. Although I've already got like a year's worth of song ideas. So never mind. Don't give us any of those. I'm kidding. Anyway, thanks, everybody.
All right. We'll see you next time. And this is like a terrible, terrible, like answering machine message experience right now. It's okay. I'm editing.